Hello, everyone. Welcome to Performance, the first virtual summit organized by Launchmetrics to discuss the future of brand performance in the fashion, luxury, and beauty industries. Thank you for joining our discussion today. This session will focus on, is the future Asia? Speaking on the topic today, we have two wonderful women who are experts in their field, Kim Leitzes, CEO of PARKLU, and Tina Ting, Marketing Director of Allbirds Asia. This session is 30 minutes followed by 15 minutes Q&A with questions that are collected from social media and networks. And don't hesitate to participate in the chat, real-time polls, and share the experience on social media through hashtag Performance2020. Also, with that said, I welcome to the stage Tina and Kim. Off to you.
Thanks, Elijah. Hi, Tina. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. So I'm very excited to be doing a Q&A with you to talk about China, a shining light in a rather challenging year in 2020. China has continued to pick up post-March and into Q4 this year. And so we're very excited to have a deep dive into different platforms and strategies revolving how brands are positioning themselves and building their communities in the market. Earlier this year in May, one of the top live streaming personalities, Austin Lee, has worked with 600 brands in the month of May alone, selling over 21 million units of product. So just to set the stage and kind of give an overview of what's happening, I wanted to ask Tina some perspectives on terms of how she chooses to invest in China. So Allbirds, which is a low carbon footprint lifestyle brand out of San Francisco, which recently launched apparel and is most well known for its comfortable shoes, launched in China last spring. So Tina, tell us a bit more of that, the thinking and the process, and how you decided where and how, which channels to invest in China.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Tina, the marketing director for China, based in Shanghai. And one of the first thing I think for us in evaluating the platform is really to understand where our customers are. And as you know, China is a very savvy, digitally savvy customer. So it was very important and very obvious for us to know that we need to look at the social media platform, the landscape. And if we are looking among the different social media platforms, WeChat is definitely a key player, almost the go-to player that replaces website. When people want to find out about the brand, they would automatically search within WeChat, or also you can scan the QR code to find out more about the brand and also talk to the customer, talk to the brand through the chat services. And other platforms as well. As you can see, there's Weibo, and then more recently with the little red book, and other video platforms, short form, long forms. They're all great. And you'll learn to find out from a brand side, it's a lot to keep up. So I think it's also looking at the resources and the content that you have to find the right fit. And you can have also explore other ways to be on the platform through KOLs. If from the brand side, there's some limitations in content and asset resources.
It's interesting, Tina, that you mentioned all these different platforms, WeChat, Weibo, Little Red Book. Oftentimes, a lot of people ask, like, why do I have to do so many? Why can't I just pick one or two? And one of those big factoids that always points out to me is this McKinsey study that says the Chinese consumer has 8 touch points before that kind of final purchase intent. And that's double of what it is for Western consumers, which is 4. So when you're really getting your brand out there and making sure that the consumer understands what you stand for, the products you have, and how is the fit. I basically have to be in multitudes of channels. So it's really helpful for you to thanks for giving that overview of how that works. Thanks for giving an introduction, Tina, on those platforms. I had a follow-up question. So one of the platforms is Little Red Book, which compared to WeChat, which has over 1 billion monthly active users, Red only has 100 million, right? And you have Douyin, which is the TikTok of China, which is well over 500 million. Why choose to invest in a smaller niche platform?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's two main points. One, I mentioned about the audience and your target audience. And 86% of Little Red Book are women. So I think from an audience perspective is definitely where your audience or potential audience are, especially with a brand like us. But another key point I think you kind of touched on earlier about the different touch points within the consumer journey. There's a really interesting nuance of why people go on the platform. It's because they're looking for more information before they make the final purchase. So their purchase intent is already there when they're searching your brand. So it's even crucial that the mindset and the intention on the platform is very clear. So from that perspective, I think it is very important for brands to have some information as customers are looking for. So I think it's a crucial and lower funnel touch point.
So we were actually looking at the PARKLU platform because we wanted to understand how Allbirds had evolved in terms of their community and content. So I just wanted to share some screen grabs with the audience here. So on the left, you have photos of Allbirds mentions on Little Red Book back in May 2019 when the brand first came to China. So you can see it's very product oriented, and then you fast forward to images of user generated content and influencer created content from this year. Did this, what was this intentional? What was happening with the brand in terms of your outreach during this period of time to go from a very product oriented content to very lifestyle driven?
Yeah, so initially we were getting a lot of comments, mostly these sort of open box. People were really excited about the product, excited that we're in China. So they, love to kind of showcase photos and selfies of their shoe. One of the insights when we entered into China that we were hearing from our customers that are not as familiar with the brand is just styling. Like, do you wear this with a dress? Do you wear this with pants or jeans? And how does it look on the different colorways? So we were getting a lot of these styling questions, and we saw that as an opportunity for us to actually provide those styling guide for our customers, especially within the very women, like a women targeted audience. So we thought it was really important that we can provide more styling and variety of content for them.
No, it's interesting because I feel like also the images from earlier, actually it seems like more male consumers. And then there's also the shift to more female consumers as time progresses. So Little Red Book has had a lot of attention for most fashion, luxury, and beauty brands. Even luxury brands have done like live streaming and such on the platform. So on the topic of various platforms, we actually saw some organic posts about Allbirds on the video app called Bilibili. So for those of you who don't know, Bilibili is a highly engaging format, particularly for the youth and Gen Z and millennials, where the fans and viewers' comments stream across the video in real time. So I'm actually going to show a clip of that. It's an organic post made by a reviewer, and he's asking questions and introducing it to his friends. So let me just pull that right up, and then Tina can introduce a bit of what's happening. So
对，还能再回来。然后这是它有2个携程，然后它里面有一个三角形的，就是它的品牌介绍。
So as you can see in this format, you have the comments running across. He's told a joke, so people are actually laughing. We extracted and translated some of that feedback from the viewers, which is, yes, 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 I want to see someone commenting on Allbirds shoes for a long time. And another viewer volunteered, these shoes are really comfortable, but for someone who hasn't tried it before, it's hard to imagine how it feels. So it's not just the creator or the influencer or KOL, as they're called in China, the key opinion leader, that's giving the feedback. Very much the fans and viewers are also seeing the audience on their and how they're interacting with the content. And someone even they raised the question, what is the carbon trade-off between the recycling process versus like producing a new box? So it actually touches upon a really interesting question about how Chinese consumers are understanding sustainability and what does it mean. So Tina, was there anything that surprised you about this video?
Well, I think for one, it's something that we see very common in China. Chinese customers really like to go deep, or even just within the community, creating more content. So that's one thing I find very fascinating, that if we have that type of platform to really be able to tell the brand story in a deeper way, which normally, when from a marketer, you're creating brand content, you're creating social media content that's lo-fi, but this is kind of on another level, which I think is very unique for China. And this is what the users are interested in: real life, real question, real review, and the actual experience of a customer opening their product for the first time. So it's really fascinating to see. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I always know if I see it from someone who seems like, I don't know, my everyday friend, or versus having a celebrity, do an unboxing. It's a very different experience in terms of what you expect them to say or comment on. This video actually goes on for 8 minutes and, goes through all the packaging and everything. So, and like in what scenarios you would wear them. So we noticed looking at the PARKLU dashboard in terms of what sort of brand association is made with Allbirds, and obviously sustainability is one of those important value propositions that Allbirds has. We noticed year over year that it's actually increased dramatically, and here we actually show it in terms of the number of influencers that are talking about Allbirds in the context of sustainability, and the frequency, has increased over 60%. So has this been and like, how have you been able to communicate this to Chinese consumers in the sense that, is it front of is it front and center, or are you balancing other aspects of the brand? How is that happening in the market?
Yeah, so sustainability has always been like one of the key pillar for the brand, and also a huge part of the brand communication. And when we launched, it's something that we've kept at the forefront, but definitely from last year to this year, I think there's a lot of factor that also plays on the social level that really speed up this awareness. For example, last year when we launched, that was when the government started requiring this recycling and separating your trash. So it was almost a national kind of action and awareness that this environmental impact is becoming to the forefront. So I think that also helped to speed up the process. And in the meantime, one of the insights that we're hearing from our audience and from our customers that, when we ask 10 people what sustainability mean, we not only get 10 different answers back, maybe even 20 different answers, or even from just like the video clips, even further deep diving into certain aspects of the recycling, the packaging to the products. So all the different questions you can think of, we've gotten. So, and that in some ways is also challenging from a marketer to pick how do you message it and to be very focused and clear. So it's really exciting to see that there's a growth, and it shows all of the communication that we are actively also pursuing is also on trend.
So I guess the positive side of having so many options for engaging with consumers, communicating with consumers, is that you have many different formats to get that message across.
Yeah, you almost co-create the content, or a reason for people to ask questions and talk about, versus maybe it's so simple that they already comprehend. So on the flip side, I think there might be that silver lining that's interesting. Yeah.
So we've covered Little Red Book. We've taken a look at Bilibili. Obviously, live streaming e-commerce is very big in China. It's been on fire. One of the top Taobao live streamers, Via, who has like 35 million plus fans on that platform, she even managed to sell a $5 million space rocket, right? So it's gone everywhere from cosmetics to fashion to very high value asset goods. So we're seeing a lot of innovation with how brands are doing live streaming, especially in a post-COVID or COVID world. What's been Allbirds' approach to live streaming?
Yeah, so live streaming has been such a hot topic, and one of the reasons it's so hot is because I think there's no one formula, and also they see the success from these KOLs and from platforms that have got tremendous amount of sales results. The way I look at it, I think to also differentiate, it's not necessarily just the end results, it's actually a tool. So I think if you look at it from that way, you have to kind of be clear on what your objective is. And for us, being really early in a stage and still working on our awareness, we see that as a good channels to be able to go deep dive and to tell that story, and to kind of be able to expand on the different elements of the brand, from product to brand to even kind of our co-founder story. So there's a lot of really interesting nuances to the story that really resonate. And live streaming was a great channel for us to kind of test the messages and seeing where are the spikes, where are the interests, what are the comments that we're getting during the live stream. And another, I think, example we can share is we've actually used live streaming during the COVID, when basically people weren't able to really go visit our stores. And they want to, they want to see our new products, they want to try, and they want to fit, and they want to see how it looks, what colors we have. So we've actually used that channels to engage with our customers. So our store staff at our 4 retail stores in Shanghai, Beijing, Chengdu, and Guangzhou, they were able to use live stream to kind of showcase our new product and see how it looks and actually fit it for them. Despite not being able to physically go visit the store. So, and that worked out really well.
So just how does that happen logistically, just to help the audience? It's not, does the customer follow your WeChat already, so they know, so they get like a notification when a live stream is starting? Or is it your store staff is like trained to connect personally one-on-one with customers, so that they can actually chat on WeChat or in maybe a group? So how is that? How are the logistics involved in connecting?
What you mentioned, we actually have both of them. So the one-on-one, I think you touched on, is through WeChat. Customers that follow us, who friend us, and we've actually have an account on WeChat, and we use the enterprise WeChat account. So our store those that follow the store can directly contact the store that they are closest to.
Got it.
The other one where it's more one-to-all, we've worked with even the mall. During that time, the mall would set up a live streaming and visit different stores, and we would be participating together with the mall to almost experience as a customer going into the store, looking at our display and talking to our store staff as if you were physically there. So so all of the above, and at different platforms too.
I mean, just what you mentioned, these would be, incredible digital adoptions, not just for within China, but outside of China, right? So it's this notion that when a customer follows a brand socially, they're also able to chat to store staff directly. So that, that's one step. Two, having retail staff that is just plugged in, like they're trained to share the retail setting, and lighting is appropriate for that kind of video format. And three, I don't know how common this is. I guess I only really know what happens in China, but actually having the malls themselves hosting live streams, right? Like bringing that audience and connecting it all.
Time too. So
yeah.
Like, oh, you turn left, I want to look at that shoe over there. We would kind of turn the camera over there and just like have that kind of interaction, which I think customer appreciates.
And I'm sure it can get quite chaotic. You might have like a bunch of customers requesting, I want to see that shoe. And honestly, from what we see, especially for our beauty brands who are our clients, they've had, they were already starting to embrace, retail staff in this whole live streaming e-commerce aspect, and this COVID accelerated it, right? It just made it like this is the best option. We've seen cases of travel retail, since Chinese are not traveling overseas or going to duty-free shops in the airport, that the travel retail spaces are actually selling products just from live stream and then shipping it to the consumer in mainland China. So I'm definitely seeing a lot of that happening. And I think we're actually getting some messages in for some questions, so we'll take some Q&A. Okay, so this question is for you, Tina. What does a brand need to consider when launching a product in the Chinese market, and do they need to adapt the product itself or only the messaging?
Yeah, that's a very common questions going into China. I think the short answer is yes, it's just a matter of time and when. And I think it's
to adopt the product, you mean? It's just a matter of time to adopt the product, localize the product.
Localize the product, localize the message. And I think it's also kind of stepping back to kind of think about what's the expectation you have for China. And then what are the resources, obviously localizing and making changes to the product isn't always easy and cheap. So for you to kind of make those steps, what are the expectations? I think it's also good to have that in your mind before you make those changes, before you make the investment. But I think eventually brands going to China, initially there might be an appeal that's interesting for some customers in China. But if you want to grow and to expand to scale, I think eventually down the line, there's definitely going to be a need to adjust your product and adjust the messaging.
One of my favorite examples is Havaianas, right? The Brazilian flip-flop brand. We're very well known for being an outdoor shoe. It's what you go out to the beach. It's what you wear when you go outdoors. But in China, wearing flip-flops or torxie, it's not common. It's what you wear inside the house. And so I remember seeing the messaging around Havaianas in China. It was basically like a complete 180 of how it was used by the customer. And so that messaging also completely changed. So just to give an anecdote to explain what we mean by localizing the product and localizing the messaging. And what is the best, let's see, I guess this is a question for you. What is the best way for someone to launch marketing strategies in the region if they're not familiar? Do they, is it a must that they hire locally, or, can they do it with agencies? Like, what do you think is, the recipe for success?
Right. I think similarly, it's similar to the previous question. I also think that eventually it's a must-have when you start to adjust the product and you need to localize the message. Having a local team really helps to verify, but still knows your product, knows the brand, and to help to navigate that. And I think before that, I would also very much encourage to listen and to talk to as many people and agencies and experts, and just to really hear how is your brand perceived, how do you think the customers would perceive your product or use the product, for example. You might discover different ways that the product could be resonating. So I think from that, and sometimes you might get really completely opposite feedback, which I think is very common in China as well. Like conflicting and trying to navigate. You can never really generalize in such a big market that almost you can't think of it as one market. There's different tiers of cities to north and south where the weather is completely different. So you also have to navigate those differences. So yeah, I would really encourage to have an open mind, have an open ear to really listen, and to really eventually, most likely, if you want to be serious about going into China, is to have a team that you can rely on to provide the most real time, as well as the changes in China, which as you know, changes so fast.
It's like the marketing plan you made 6 months ago may be completely invalidated and need to be replaced, and reassessed every month, basically. I know it's quite common. At least from PARKLU perspective, we have a lot of clients who they want help with an annual plan. So they want to know, competitor benchmarking. How are they trending versus peer brands? How are they trending versus brands they aspire to in terms of digital innovation and brand positioning? And it's so insightful to sort of be able to look at that, aggregate it, piece it all together, be like, okay, this brand's investing a lot in micro-influencers on, Douyin, and this one's investing in mostly top tier on live streaming, et cetera. But unfortunately, that's just like a baseline because that was all based on what happened in the past, right? And then we know that the strategy for next year, it's unlikely the brands are gonna, duplicate the strategy they did last year and apply next year. So so the question is, how do you predict and how do you stay ahead of the curve? And obviously, depending on the industry, we have found it's always interesting to take a deep dive and see what the domestic Chinese brands are doing, because they're experimenting really fast, right? They don't have to go through time zones to get strategies approved. It's all happening in one place. This is their core market. So we always like looking to see, okay, how are global brands managing in China, and then what's happening with domestic brands. And so it's always an eye opener in terms of that.
To add on that, oftentimes you think, oh, you build a China team, you have some staff in China, and you're good to go, and they can just localize. And I think that's almost oversimplifying it, because you're still one brand, and oftentimes, sometimes you forget Chinese actually want brands that are different, and if you over localize, you might almost face this challenge that you're just any other brand that is available in China. And if especially with the copycats in China, they kind of pop up super fast. So you need to also keep in mind what is your differentiating factor. And oftentimes it's the brand itself. It's what's happening kind of on the next level on the brand side as you are evolving. So I think it's really a teamwork and needing to kind of bring along the local team together, but to understand the nuances in China and find ways to maybe localize on certain product and being able to localize on messages without looking like a completely different brand. So I know it's hard to navigate, and also by different product category. For example, FMCG, you see very much localization, but then maybe when it comes to a little bit higher price point, people actually want to have this more aspirational lifestyle that they build. So you need a little more distance. So it's definitely not easy, but just wanted to caveat that.
No, you should. You can disagree with me. It's okay. This next question is for me, but you can chime in, Tina. So, celebrities and influencers are expensive. If we have a celebrity on contract for a global campaign, is it safe to use them in China as well, or will that backfire because we didn't adjust locally? Kind of this theme of, is it worth the extra budget to have a local influencer? Well, it's always worth the extra budget to have a local influencer. Which, by the way, I'm not sure we defined it in earlier in this discussion. So when we say influencer, I think in the China context, you have celebrities, and then you have KOLs, which are key opinion leaders, or as they're more commonly known, influencers outside of China. So a celebrity is someone who derives their fame from, professionally created content. So media, movies, music, variety shows, etc. Whereas influencers are, KOLs in China are from really internet content. So whether that's their own video, live stream, blogs, etc. So on the topic, is it worth it to have a local influencer? I mean, if you think about it, if someone's famous but they're not speaking to you in your language, right? It's a different context, right? There's already some distance there. If you look at some of the famous Western celebrities and you compare their numbers in China, it'll be like a fraction of what a Chinese or Korean or Asian celebrity would be in the market. I certainly know I think one of the most famous TV hosts in China, she has literally like 157 million followers, on Weibo. But someone, if we look at even the Taylor Swift or Kim Kardashians in China, they only be tens of millions in terms of followers. So I think that's something to understand is, yes, your Western celebrity will have a following in China. It just don't expect the same impact, right? Okay, next question. How has COVID and the pandemic changed how consumers are spending? Many say China's on the road to recovery or is the road to recovery. What do you have to say about that? Well, Tina, how's life in Shanghai?
I think I could say it's pretty normal.
Yeah. So, I mean, the data on the China consumption side is it has been growing, although modest, initially in Q2, and continues to grow. In certain sectors, it's high teens. I think overall GDP is maybe in low single digits, but certainly in February when when kind of COVID first hit, you did see segments like apparel and such down 30%. And briefly, cosmetics was down, but quickly once things sort of recovered, you saw that pick up in March and April, and there actually was positive growth across these sectors. So in terms of the road to recovery, I think China, the consumer is being cautious. They are paying more attention to health and self-care and well-being, but they're spending. And I think a lot of it too is that there was probably a lot of support from the government in terms of employment and any sort of disruption to the economy. And so you didn't have, you just simply didn't have massive unemployment the way it's happened in other markets.
I mean, I think I just listened on a podcast yesterday that the GDP was down 8% during the COVID lockdown. So, China went through it hard during that time when it was completely shut down. But then now it's up 5 to 6%. So it's kind of like you sacrifice that period of time, but now that sacrifice kind of is paying off, and people are it's pretty much everyone is mostly back to normal, but still, of course, there might be waves coming back, but as close to normal as possible.
We certainly saw in like February, March that a lot of influencer collaborations were paused or canceled, but everything got picked up again by, April, May, and certainly now leading into Singles Day. It's been...
All the events are happening now, so all the budget spend is now just pushed to half the year, so it's going to be a crazy rest half the year.
Correct. It just makes those celebrities and influencers more expensive. What would you say are the trends that define Chinese consumers of tomorrow? And what are the commonalities and differences with the younger Chinese consumer of today with their Western peers?
Oh, so that's for me, huh?
Well, you can both answer.
So I'll just speak on what we've been hearing across the different market, and we've been actively learning about our consumers and trying to find what's similar and what's different. And one thing I can share is that what we're learning is that across our market, the customer actually just wants to look good, feel good, and also do good. So I think this do good part, of course, like the COVID and the health and wellness, the sustainability has accelerated this desire and this need. And it's an insight that we're really taking to heart to see how we can actually provide a platform, for those that want to do something about the current environment, the current climate change, and participate in this. So this is really exciting.
Actually, there was a Mintel study done last year that surveyed Chinese consumers and Western consumers. So there are a couple interesting points from it. One was 58% of Chinese consumers are actually willing to pay like a premium for like ethically produced fashion products. So that was, the right step, especially for a brand like Allbirds. And then there was also part of the survey was asking who do they perceive as most responsible or most impactful for doing good to the environment, and what can they do about climate change. And so I think on this question of what is the difference between Chinese consumers and Western, I think of those surveyed, 16% said they think as an individual there's like steps that they can change and they're individually responsible. And I think from the Western audience it was 20%. So it's not that different. I mean, it's
especially the younger audience now. Yeah,
correct. So in terms of how much they see as how much is in their court to make a difference and do good, but also the Chinese consumer is like, look, their expectation was really the government is 37% that the government's responsible for really leading that change. And as you mentioned earlier in this discussion, the China government has made this a priority in terms of this whole green movement. So, really. So thank you all for joining us today and hearing our perspectives on brand strategies from east to west. And we, I'm sure we're quite biased. We do believe the future is Asia. But we welcome counter opinions and such, and don't hesitate at all to reach out. I'm actually going to share my WeChat. So for those of you in WeChat, you can scan to connect with me directly and or reach out with Launchmetrics. And happy to take on this discussion via email as well. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Tina, for your time today. And looking forward, because I know the next year's conference will have a completely different set of platforms to talk about. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.